Picture yourself in a time long ago. The air is still, the candlelight is low. Tonight, we drift into a hidden, gentle force, the power of the shared mind. How does one person's dream become a whole city's reality? We begin by walking through the silent ruins of history where sometimes the most solid things, the ghosts, the plagues, the miracles, were only seen by the tired eyes of many. Close your eyes, breathe deep. Let the soft whispers of collective wonder guide you through these forgotten, eerie moments. They are not just tales of madness, but quiet lessons in how connected we truly are. Let the history begin to glow, and let your body start to sink into the quiet. The mind's quiet doorway opens. Our eyes do not always see the world clearly. They see shapes and colours, but the human mind must do the rest of the work. It fills in all the shadows. If you walk into a deep, dark room, your mind starts to guess what is there. It takes a faint sound and turns it into the step of a person. It takes a quiet shadow and gives it a face. This guessing is called suggestion. It is a soft, quiet mechanism that is always working. This simple science is the tiny seed of all mass wonder we will talk about tonight. This is the first lesson on the nature of mass hallucination. Long ago, people lived in the quiet dark much more than we do now. They were often surrounded by tall forests or rough oceans. They already believed in hidden dangers and kind spirits. When they were alone, they might see a light that was not a star. When they were together, and one person said, "A monster lives in that old tree," the others quickly believed it. Their minds were already prepared to see the monster. This simple agreement built the first shared visions of history. It proves that what we expect to see is often what our eyes show us. This power of belief is not a bad thing. It is simply how we share our world. If a wise person or a trusted friend says a thing is true, your mind wants to help you believe them. It is how culture grows and how we learn quickly. This trust makes us safe when we are together. But this strong trust also makes us weak to mass suggestion. When a whole group shares one worry, the doorway in everyone's mind opens to the same picture. This picture is not real, but it feels real to every single person in the room. The science of psychology tells us that the brain wants to save energy. It does not want to check every shadow or every sound. If a large group of people says they saw a ghost army, the brain says, "It must be true, let's see it too." It is easier to agree than to be the only person who did not see the impossible thing. This shared, easy path is what makes these events so fast and strong. It proves that the most powerful force in history is not stone or steel, but the quiet agreement of a collective mind. We see how a quiet, old-world atmosphere helps this feeling to grow. The feeling of being in a deep forest, or an old quiet. Church makes the mind ready for something great. The smell of old stone, the sound of the wind, the low light of a candle, all these things make our senses tired and open the doorway to suggestion. The atmosphere is like soft, dark paper, and the shared feeling is the pencil that draws the same picture on all the pages. This is the simple setup for the great collective dramas that followed. Tonight, we will learn that the mass mind is a fragile and beautiful thing. It can create impossible wonders that change history forever. But the moment the light comes on, or the crowd goes home, the doorway often quietly closes. The picture fades, and the monster goes back to being just an old tree. Let this thought sit softly with you as we move into the first real stories of how a feeling spread and became a great shared light. Shared feelings spread like candlelight. Before seeing comes the feeling. No mass hallucination starts with a single sight. It starts with a shared feeling. This shared feeling is like a small, quiet candle. One person lights their wick with worry or stress. Then they stand next to the next person, and the second wick catches the flame. Soon, a whole street or a whole village is warmed by the same small, anxious light. This process is called emotional contagion, and it is the true engine of mass hysteria in history. We feel the danger before we see the ghost. In the old days, life was often very hard. There was always the fear of bad harvest, sickness or war. People lived close together, and their nerves were already stretched tight like a wire. They were ready for something terrible to happen. This shared stress or collective anxiety acted like a fuel. When one young person suddenly felt a tremor or a sudden headache, the group's shared worry quickly decided what that feeling meant. It meant the devil, a curse, or a poison. This is why we see sickness spread so quickly without any real germ. When a group of people feels weak and one person says, "I think I was poisoned by the new water," then everyone else's stress turns their own stomach ache into proof of the poison. Their mind gives the feeling a name, and that name spreads faster than any real disease. This is the power of the mind to make the body sick. It is a quiet, powerful echo inside all of us, a truly historical psychological event. The simplest way this happens is through body language. A person does not need to speak a word to spread the feeling. If you see your friend's face go pale with fear, your own body starts to get ready for danger. Your heart beats faster, and your eyes look for the threat. This is a very old, deep survival mechanism that we share with many animals. But in a stressed human crowd, this fast, silent communication tells everyone that the shared threat is real and visible. This spreading feeling is very fast, much faster than words or letters. It shows that our nervous systems speak to each other even when we are quiet. The emotion becomes the atmosphere itself. Think of how a low sound in a concert hall can make everyone feel tense, even if they do not know why. When the tension is high, the mind is ready to find the cause. It is like a camera that is already focused on a single spot, waiting for a flash of light. The dancing sickness of Strasbourg that we will talk about next did not start with dancing. It started with a heavy feeling of stress and fear that grew in the air of the city for many weeks. The people were quiet and worried. The dancing was the strange, sudden way that the shared feeling finally broke out of their bodies. The mass mind chose a strange action for the collective anxiety. Let this thought sit softly. Every great mass wonder starts as a small, shared tension in the quiet of a worried community. Strasbourg, the day no one could stop. This is one of the strangest, quietest stories in all of mass hysteria. In the year 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Trophäa simply began to dance in the street. This was no happy dance. She could not stop. Day after day she kept moving, and soon other people joined her. They were not friends or family. They were strangers from the same town. Within a month, hundreds of people were dancing until they collapsed. They could not rest, stop, or sleep. This was the famous dancing plague. The people of Strasbourg were suffering greatly before the dancing started. The city was full of poverty, bad harvests, and the constant fear of a sickness called smallpox. This created a high level of collective anxiety, the shared feeling we talked about in the last chapter. They needed a way for this immense stress to leave their bodies, and their minds found a terrible way out. The first woman's desperate movements acted as a strong suggestion for everyone else under the same heavy cloud. At first, the city leaders thought the dancers needed to sweat the sickness out. They encouraged the dancing, clearing streets for the crowd, and even building a wooden stage. They thought the dance was a fever that had to burn itself out. This decision was a powerful act of validation. It told the people that their sickness was real, and that dancing was the cure. This only made the mass hysteria grow stronger, with even more people joining the frantic, non-stop movement that had no music or joy. The dancing was not a fun or gentle thing. The dancers moved until their feet bled, and their bodies were totally exhausted. Some even died from heart attack, stroke, or pure fatigue. It was a terrifying, shared mass psychogenic illness. The people believed they were cursed by a saint who would not let them stop moving. They did not see ghosts, but they were forced to perform an impossible, dangerous action that their minds commanded. This showed the immense power of suggestion over the physical body. This event is not unique in history, though it is the largest. There were other smaller dancing plagues in Europe before and after this great event. They often happened in times of great stress and famine, proving the link between suffering and this strange physical release. The plague shows us that the mind can create a shared, dangerous reality that is stronger than the body's need for rest. No law and no fence could stop the terrible command to move. The mystery of the dancing plague remains a quiet lesson in history. It teaches us that shared trauma can find the strangest outlets. When people feel helpless, their minds may create a collective command to act. Tonight, as you rest, remember the tireless, desperate dancers of Strasbourg. Their story reminds us of the strength and the weakness of the shared mind. It shows the deep, strange places that collective emotion can take us when we are under great pressure. The village that could not stop laughing. In a quiet village in modern Tanzania, a different kind of uncontrollable movement began. In 1962, a few schoolgirls at a simple boarding school started to laugh. This was not a happy sound. The laughter was sudden, intense, and impossible to stop. It was a physical action that took over their bodies, much like the dancing sickness. Soon the laughter spread to dozens of other girls. This was the start of the Tanganyika laughter epidemic, a modern case of mass hysteria. The laughter quickly spread across the whole village, forcing the school to close down. When the girls went home, they carried the strange sickness with them, and it started to affect their family members and neighbours in other villages nearby. It was a powerful, strange sickness that did not need a germ to travel. It travelled along the shared path of the collective mind. The symptoms included not just laughter, but crying, fainting, and general panic. The feeling was shared by many, but the true cause was not physical. When doctors studied the event, they found no poison, no specific germ, and no single food source to blame. The students at the school were under immense collective anxiety. The school was strict and the future felt uncertain. When one person's stress finally broke out as uncontrollable laughter, the minds of the others, already filled with the same stress, adopted the strange action. The laughter became the visible sign of the community's deep, quiet worry. This event shows us that the kind of strange action chosen by the mass mind is often based on local culture and stress. In medieval Europe, the stress broke out as dancing. In this quiet African village, the stress broke out as sudden, helpless laughter. It is a form of conversion disorder, where the energy of the emotional problem is turned into a physical symptom. The body acts out the hidden panic that the mind cannot speak or understand. The laughter would last from a few hours to several weeks in the people who were affected. The epidemic lasted for over a year, with many schools and villages having to close down again and again. It was a collective phenomenon that disrupted daily life, yet it left no lasting physical harm on the people once it was finally over. The sickness ended when the shared stress of the community finally started to ease, and the intense period of change became a little calmer. This soft, strange story of uncontrollable laughter reminds us that we are deeply connected. The stress of one person can be the beginning of a strange and serious crisis for hundreds. Tonight, as you rest, know that your body often speaks for your mind in strange, quiet ways. The mass mind is always listening. It is a powerful, emotional echo that can make a whole village laugh or weep at the same time. London, the ghost that followed. The London Ghost is a famous quiet story of the early 1900s. In one district of the city, many unrelated people, often walking home alone in the fog, reported seeing the exact same figure. This ghost was always described in the same way: tall, thin, and always silent. It would appear at night, often triggered by the collective stress of the time. This was not a single, isolated haunting. It was a mass sighting of a shared, imagined figure. London was a city of deep shadows, winding streets, and constant, thick fog. The air was heavy with coal smoke and worry. This atmosphere made the mind ready to see things. People already felt separated and anxious in the huge, dark city. They were waiting for a quiet danger. When one person reported seeing a figure in the fog that was not quite real, the idea spread quietly through the district as a local superstition. The mass mind quickly adopted this specific image of the silent, waiting ghost. This kind of haunting is a perfect example of how suggestion works in an anxious population. The ghost did not need to be real. The common fear of walking alone in the dark city was already real. The ghost simply gave that fear a name and a shape that everyone could agree on. It became a piece of shared local knowledge. When a tire worker saw a tree branch or a shadow moving fast, their mind instantly changed the shape into the shared known image of the London ghost. The psychological term for this event is stimulus ambiguity. This means that when the thing you see is unclear, like a faint shape in the fog, your mind will choose the most probable or most feared explanation. Because everyone in that district feared the ghost, their minds chose the ghost as the correct way to fill in the blank. It shows how strong the power of a local legend can be, even for smart modern people. The expectation created the reality. We know that many of the reported sightings were simply people seeing other people, or perhaps a strange light or shape. But the collective memory smoothed out the differences. The stories were retold and shared until the vague figure became clear, tall, and silent in everyone's mind. The history of this ghost is a history of shared urban legend, a psychological map of the city's quietest fears. The story of the London ghost reminds us that a haunting can be a form of comfort. It is easier to be afraid of a known ghost than of the nameless, quiet pressure of modern city life. Tonight, as you rest, remember that the dark shapes you see in the corner of your eye are often just the mind filling in the empty space. But when a city shares the same worry, the same shadow might follow everyone home. This is the simple, strange history of collective haunting. The town smelled a secret danger, 600 words. In the quiet American town of Mattoon, Illinois, during the 1940s, a sudden and terrifying event took place. Many people reported smelling a strange, sweet, sick gas. Soon, people reported that an unknown person was breaking into homes and spraying this gas on sleeping people. The victims, mostly women, would feel sick, weak, and even paralysed. This mystery person became known in the press as the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. The town was already under stress from the war, and the whole community was ready for a sudden unknown danger. The first reports of the sweet gas came from a few people, but the newspapers quickly turned the event into a massive story. The police searched every street and every house, but they found no one, no gas canisters, and no clear evidence of any attacker. This lack of facts did not stop the fear. It only made the collective anxiety much worse. When one woman reported feeling sick and smelling the gas, the newspapers gave the event a name. This name, the Mad Gasser, acted as a huge suggestion for the whole town. Every small headache, every moment of dizziness, and every strange smell was immediately blamed on the imaginary attacker. The power of suggestion caused many people to experience real, physical symptoms, even though they were never attacked by a real person or a real gas. This is a classic case of mass psychogenic illness. The initial stress was real, the war, the economic worry, and the symptoms were real, nausea, weakness. But the cause that everyone agreed upon, the gasser, was a product of the collective mind. The citizens of Mattoon turned their shared internal worry into an external walking danger. It was a shared drama that allowed them to understand and face their unseen anxiety. The whole event calmed down and stopped as quickly as it had begun. The police eventually decided that the reports were mostly caused by the imagination of the people, who were under too much stress. The very few small chemical incidents that did happen were blown up by the media and turned into a massive organised attack. The mass hallucination ended when the town slowly agreed to turn off the shared belief and return to the quiet reality of their homes. Tonight, the story of the mad gasser reminds us how quickly we look for a simple, outside cause for our deep, inside worries. The people of Mattoon needed a villain for their stress, and their shared mind created one for them. Rest now, and know that not every bad smell or sudden fear is a real enemy. Sometimes it is only the sound of a whole community breathing out a deep held-in worry. This is the power of mass delusion. The sky opened for simple people. The quiet history of Marian apparitions is a deep example of collective vision based on hope and faith. These are events where groups of humble villagers, often children, report seeing the same beautiful divine image in the sky or in a quiet field. The images are always consistent, always offer comfort, and always reinforce the shared deep faith of the people. This is a powerful spiritual form of mass suggestion. The most famous of these events often happened in poor religious communities that were suffering or under great political pressure. The people were stressed, but their shared feeling was not fear. It was deep hope for a miracle. Their hearts and minds were perfectly ready to see a sign from heaven. When the children or simple farmers first reported the vision, the community's shared need for comfort immediately gave the vision great weight and reality. At the heart of these sightings is shared expectation. The people already believed in the image of the Virgin Mary, the gentle mother figure. When an unusual light, a strange weather effect, or an ambiguous sight happened in the sky, their minds filled in the details with the one comforting image they expected to see. The power of collective faith transformed natural events into a profound, personal experience for everyone present. The stories of these apparitions are always quiet and gentle. They involve messages of peace, prayer, and hope for a better future. Unlike the terror of the dancing sickness, these mass visions served a deeply positive psychological purpose. They reduced the collective anxiety of the community by giving them a divine promise that things would get better. The hallucination offered a peaceful place to rest the mind from the stress of the real world. Over time, these visions grew stronger in the collective memory. The initial vague sightings became clear, detailed, an undeniable truth for the people who shared them. They became physical places of pilgrimage and hope, changing the map of belief forever. This proves that a mass vision does not need to be based on fear. It can also be born from deep, sincere hope and a powerful shared wish for comfort and guidance in a scary world. Tonight, as we close this first chapter, let the quiet strength of collective hope rest on you. These stories show us that the mind can create great comfort when we need it most. The light they saw in the sky was not the light of a star, but the warm, deep glow of their own shared faith. Now, we will move into the great historical dramas where these quiet visions became big events that shaped whole nations. Salem. The shadows took other shapes. The Salem witch trials of 1692 are one of history's darkest lessons in mass hysteria. It began with a small group of young women who began to suffer from strange fits, uncontrollable shaking, and screaming. The community, which was living under strict religious laws and facing great danger from the wilderness, was already under severe collective anxiety. The symptoms of the girls were real, but the cause they claimed, spectral attacks from witches, was a product of the mass mind. The Puritans believed very strongly in the reality of the devil and his power on earth. They were waiting for a sign of evil. When the girls' strange symptoms began, the doctor could not find a physical cause, so he said they were bewitched. This official statement from an authority figure was a massive suggestion to the whole town. It gave the community's deep, quiet fear a definite enemy to fight. The shadows of their own anxiety took the shape of witches. The girls claimed to see the witches' spectres, or ghostly shapes tormenting them during the fits. Because the entire community believed in this possibility, the courts accepted this spectral evidence. This meant that if a girl claimed she saw a woman's ghost hurting her, it was proof the woman was a witch. This belief system allowed the mass delusion to grow unchecked, leading to arrests and trials based entirely on invisible, shared visions of danger and evil. The symptoms the girls displayed, from muscle spasms to the feeling of being pricked by pins, were classic signs of mass psychogenic illness. The deep, shared fear and the public drama of the trials created a psychological echo chamber. The more the community believed and acted on the fear, the more real the fits and the spectral visions became for the victims. It was a terrible loop of fear and suggestion that fed itself. The tragedy of Salem shows how easy it is for an entire society to lose its sense of reality when it is under pressure. The need to find a simple, clear cause for suffering led them to execute innocent people based on a collective hallucination. This historical moment is a dark, powerful example of how religion, authority, and deep, quiet stress can combine to create a deadly social event based on nothing but a shared vision. Tonight, we rest on the quiet warning of this story. The shadows that took shape in Salem were the shadows of the community's own fear and strict rules. The psychological historian sees a tragic failure of human connection, not a true battle with evil. The event reminds us that the power of a shared belief, even a false one, can change history forever and silence the truth. The shadow man who cut nothing. In the quiet English town of Halifax, a wave of terror swept through the streets in the 1930s. Citizens were convinced that a mysterious man was attacking them, cutting their clothes and their bodies with a sharp knife. The police were overwhelmed by the number of victims who reported being slashed, but they found something very strange. The victims often had cuts, but there was little evidence of a real attacker, and no strong proof that the attacker had cut anyone in a way that truly threatened their life. The story of the Halifax slasher grew quickly in the newspapers. The economic times were hard, and many people were under the heavy weight of collective anxiety. The idea of a dangerous man in the streets gave their worry a focus. Every small cut, every accidental tear in clothing, and every bruise was suddenly blamed on the slasher. The town's shared fear created a single, agreed-upon villain for the troubles they were already feeling inside. The attacks were a perfect example of how mass suggestion works on a grand scale. The first few initial reports, which may have been small accidents, were validated by the police and the media. Once the idea of the slasher was established, the minds of the people, already fearing a hidden enemy, began to create the events. They would see a shadow and feel a sharp pain, all in the same moment. The mind convinced the body that the attack was real. A few weeks later, the police decided to step back and look at the facts again. They realised that the panic was causing people to hurt themselves, or to mistake minor accidents for a violent attack. They announced that the slasher was a product of the people's imagination, a true mass delusion. The police charged a few young people with causing a public nuisance for making false reports, which finally helped to break the cycle of fear. The most important point of the Halifax slasher event is how quickly the delusion stopped. As soon as the town leaders and police publicly declared that the villain was not real, the sightings and the attacks simply stopped. This proves that the force behind the event was not a man with a knife, but the silent shared belief of the people. Once the suggestion was officially withdrawn, the collective mind agreed to stop seeing the shadow man. Tonight, we rest on the quiet lesson of the slasher. We learn that sometimes, the greatest dangers we face are the ones we create ourselves when we are under too much stress. The fear of the town was real, and so were the cuts, but the attacker was the community's own shared anxiety. Know that when the light of truth shines on a mass vision, the shadow is often the first thing to run away and hide. Fatima, a spinning wheel of light. In the quiet village of Fatima, Portugal, a great event took place in 1917. 3 shepherd children claimed that the Virgin Mary appeared to them and promised a miracle. On the day of the promise, up to 100,000 people gathered in the muddy field. They were waiting for a sign. When the event occurred, this massive crowd reported seeing the sun dance, spin, and even change colours in the sky. This was the famous miracle of the sun, one of the largest recorded mass sightings in history. The crowd was a mix of believers and people who did not believe, all standing together under a very intense shared expectation. It had rained heavily, and the sun broke through the clouds in a strange way, causing a unique atmospheric effect. Many scientists believe that looking directly at the sun for a long time, especially after a period of cloud cover, can damage the eyes and cause optical effects. This visual ambiguity was the simple start of the shared vision. The strong suggestion from the children, the anticipation of the crowd, and the unusual solar effect combined to create the collective hallucination. Many people reported seeing the sun spin like a wheel of fire or drop toward the earth. This vision reinforced their deep religious faith. The miracle was seen exactly the way the people, who were worried about the ongoing world war, needed it to be seen. It offered them comfort and divine protection in a time of great fear. However, not every person in the crowd saw the same thing. Many people only saw the sun, or a change in the light, and others saw nothing at all. But the collective memory of the event smoothed out these differences. The story that survived was the one the group needed. The story of the spinning, dancing sun. This shows how the shared need for a miracle can edit the facts of an event until they fit the group's deepest desire for belief and hope. The Fatima miracle is a powerful study in the sociology of belief. The mass vision was so strong that it created a major global religious event and changed the political and spiritual map of Portugal forever. It proves that the size of a crowd does not stop a mass delusion. In fact, the energy and shared focus of a massive crowd can make the suggestion even stronger and more powerful. Tonight, we rest under the quiet sky. The spinning wheel of light that so many people saw was the perfect symbol of their shared hope, not just a physical event. Let this story remind you that we are always seeking meaning in the light. When a great many people look up with the same deep wish, the sky often shows them exactly what they need to see. This is the enduring mystery of collective faith. The radio voice that ended the world. In 1938, on a Sunday night, millions of people across the United States were listening to their radios. A special program was aired, the reading of a fictional book called The War of the Worlds. The drama used news bulletin-style announcements to tell the story of aliens attacking Earth. Though the show announced it was fiction many times, a large portion of the audience believed the reports were real. This was a massive sudden wave of panic, a true mass hysteria caused by media. The people were already living in a time of great political and economic worry. War was beginning in Europe, and the world felt unstable. This collective anxiety made them perfectly ready to believe in a sudden great disaster. For many, the radio was the most trusted source of news, like a simple, quiet friend in the living room. When that trusted voice told them of the alien attack, their minds accepted the news as an undeniable truth. The trust became the most powerful force of suggestion. People began to call the police and news stations in a frenzy. They reported seeing the aliens, smelling the gas, and hearing the distant sounds of battle in their own towns. People ran from their homes, some tried to drive away, and others locked themselves in their basements. The reports of the fictional aliens turned into real local sightings. This is how the mass mind works. It takes a piece of information and then creates the local evidence to support the main story. The panic was not caused by seeing a light in the sky or a ghost on the street. It was caused by a voice in the dark. This event proved that mass hallucination can travel through technology, not just through close contact in a town square. The radio acted as a wire, sending the same terrible picture into the minds of millions of people at the same time, without them ever needing to touch or speak to each other. The power of this event lies in the quickness of the belief. Within minutes, the simple sound of a worried actor's voice was enough to create real, physical fear and chaos across a whole country. It showed that belief is often stronger than reason. Even after the radio station announced again that it was only a story, many people refused to believe it. Their minds had already invested too much emotion and fear into the reality of the alien war. Tonight, we rest on the lesson of the radio. The most effective mass suggestion often comes from a source we already trust. The story reminds us how fragile our sense of reality is, and how quickly a voice in the dark can make the world disappear. As you drift to sleep, know that the collective fear is a great listener, and it will always respond to the most convincing voice. The hidden poison in shared food. In the Middle Ages, there were many sudden strange outbreaks of sickness that people blamed on evil spirits, witches, or the devil. People would suffer fits, burning pain in their hands and feet, or sudden strange muscle spasms. This was a terrible time of mass delusion and fear. The truth was often much simpler, but still very strange. A hidden poison in their most common food, bread. The hidden poison was a fungus called ergot. It often grows on rye grain, which was the most common grain used to bake bread for poor people. When people ate this poisoned bread, the ergot fungus made them truly sick. It caused terrible physical symptoms like burning pain, muscle spasms, and even real hallucinations. But because people in that time did not know about fungi, they used the only language they had to explain their suffering, the language of spirits. The collective anxiety and the stress of a hard life made the psychological side of the sickness worse. When a few people started twitching from the ergot, the shared belief in evil spirits made the whole community think they were under a demonic attack. The physical symptoms were real, but the meaning, demonic possession, was a mass delusion. The sickness, known as St. Anthony's fire, was a terrible mix of a real poison and a shared cultural fear. The strange thing about these outbreaks is that they show us the fine line between physical and psychological events. A real physical toxin was the starter, but the mass hysteria was the fire that spread the belief. The sight of a person having a fit was a powerful suggestion to others. The people who had only eaten a little bit of the poisoned bread, or not at all, might still start to feel sick because of the extreme fear and the shared psychological suggestion. We see a similar pattern with simple food poisoning outbreaks today. When many people at a party feel sick, they quickly agree on the one food that made them ill. But sometimes people who did not eat that food still feel the symptoms because of the powerful collective suggestion. Their minds believe they should be sick, and their bodies quickly obey the command of the group's shared belief. Tonight, we rest on the quiet history of the hidden poison. The suffering was real, but the meaning the people gave it was a mass hallucination. This story is a gentle reminder that we must look closely at all the small details, even the grain in the bread, to understand the great, strange events of history. The power of the mind to name a danger is often more potent than the danger itself. The angels that flew over the trenches. The Battle of Mons in World War I was a time of unimaginable stress and fear. British soldiers were exhausted, outnumbered, and facing certain defeat. In this moment of extreme collective anxiety and trauma, many soldiers reported seeing impossible visions, a shadowy band of ghostly bowmen from an ancient battle, or even angelic figures defending them from the German lines. This was the famous story of the Angels of Mons. The vision was born out of a desperate shared need for salvation. The soldiers were under such extreme stress that their minds created a coping mechanism. They needed to believe they were not fighting alone. The shared danger and the sudden, intense hope created a powerful, positive mass hallucination. The vision of the angels was not a sign of madness, but a sign of the immense strength of the collective mind to protect itself from total psychological collapse. The story was quickly spread by the British press and became a great comforting national legend. It gave the war a religious higher meaning and provided courage for the soldiers. The simple sight of a flash of light or a strange smoke formation was quickly adopted by the minds of the tired soldiers. Their shared expectation and their hope for a miracle turned the light into an angel, and the smoke into an ancient archer. The suggestion was accepted by the weary minds instantly. However, the stories quickly became tangled. Some reported bowmen, some reported a saint, and some reported true angels. But the collective memory smoothed out the differences until the central, comforting image was agreed upon. The fact that the visions were reported by many different soldiers in different places proves the power of the mass mind to create a shared reality, especially in the face of great trauma. The Angels of Mons reminds us of the power of positive suggestion. Unlike the terror of the witch trials, this was a vision of hope and protection. It served a real psychological function, allowing the soldiers to keep fighting and to find peace in their minds during a time of extreme violence. The mass vision was a silent, beautiful defense mechanism created by thousands of tired, brave minds working together. Tonight, we honour the quiet strength of the soldier's hope. When the world is at its darkest, the collective mind can still find a way to create a light. Rest now, and remember that even in the toughest times of history, people found a way to share a comforting dream, even if it was just a shadow on the edge of the smoke. The most powerful armies are sometimes the ones that no one can truly see. Lights in the sky that call to many. The modern phenomenon of UFO waves is the perfect example of mass hallucination in the modern world. In a short period of time, many people across a large region report seeing the same vague lights, shapes, or flying objects in the sky. This is a powerful modern form of mass sighting, where the shared image is no longer a ghost or an angel, but an alien ship from another planet. This began in the mid-20th century, a time of great change and scientific exploration. People felt that the world was becoming much bigger and stranger. Their collective anxiety was about the future and about hidden military secrets. The invention of the flying saucer shape in the media gave this anxiety a clear, simple form. When people saw weather balloons, airplanes, or strange lights, their minds quickly used the suggestion of the alien ship to explain the unknown. The key to the UFO wave is the shared cultural lens. The people saw something real, a light, a cloud, an aircraft, but their mass mind interpreted it through the popular culture of science fiction and alien invasion. Everyone was watching the same movies and reading the same books. This shared background made it easy for everyone to agree on the same impossible explanation for the things they saw in the night sky. A famous case is the light seen in Lubbock, Texas, where a row of mysterious lights was seen by many people. They were likely a flock of birds reflecting city lights, but the collective suggestion of the time turned them into strange objects flying in formation. The people needed a scientific mystery for their scientific age, and their minds created a perfect modern mass delusion that was spread quickly by the power of the news and television. The UFO wave phenomenon proves that mass hysteria is not just an old medieval problem. It is a constant part of the human mind. We will always look for an external explanation for our internal worries. When we are stressed about the government, we see a hidden conspiracy. When we are worried about the size of the universe, we see a ship from far away. The fear simply changes its mast to match the time. Tonight we look up at the quiet sky. The simple lights you see are often just stars or planes, but the collective mind is always ready to turn a small, vague light into a great, shared adventure. Rest now and know that the greatest wonders we find in the universe are often the ones we build together in our shared imagination. The shadow of the alien ship is a shadow of our own modern wonder and fear. Where the story spreads fastest now. In the modern world, the story of a mass hallucination no longer needs to travel by foot or by boat. Now it travels at the speed of light. This chapter looks at how modern science, like a psychological historian, maps the spread of a collective belief. We can see the invisible connections between people where the shared belief or the mass delusion takes hold, showing the true network of the collective mind. Scientists use charts and graphs to map the spread of a mass psychogenic illness, just like they map a real flu. The patterns are often the same. The suggestion usually starts in a central busy place, a school, a factory or a social media group, and then radiates outward along the most common path of human contact. It is like throwing a stone into a quiet pond, and the rings of anxiety spread outward one by one. The speed of the spread shows how strong the power of suggestion is. When a story is shared by a trusted friend or a respected news source, the belief jumps from one mind to the next without pausing for doubt. The faster the shared worry travels, the more powerful the subsequent mass sighting or physical symptom will be. The map of belief shows a very fast short-circuiting of critical thought across a population. The maps also show that these events often stop when the path of connection is broken. If a school closes down for a day, the spreading sickness often stops in its tracks. This proves that the power of proximity, being close to others who believe the delusion, is the real fuel. The shared physical presence and the collective anxiety are necessary to keep the mass mind focused on the single, false vision. Today, the internet and social media act as the most efficient new path for mass suggestion. A whole community can share a delusion without ever leaving their home. The panic travels through text and images, which are perfect tools for giving vague fear a simple, agreed-upon shape. The speed of the connection makes the mass hysteria more intense, even if the physical symptoms are not always present. Tonight, we rest on the quiet knowledge of the map. The lines on the chart show us that we are all deeply connected in thought and feeling. The story of a mass hallucination is really a map of human connection. When you feel a sudden worry, know that others around you might be feeling the same thing, and that quiet feeling can easily turn into a great shared belief. The hidden power to make yourself sick. We have talked about how hope can make a person feel better. This is the placebo effect. The mind believes a sugar pill will help, and the body actually improves. But the dark mirror of the placebo is called the nocebo effect. This is where the mind believes a substance or force will harm the body, and that belief actually causes real, physical symptoms. This hidden power is a huge part of every mass psychogenic illness. The nocebo effect shows the immense power of negative suggestion. In the Mattoon Gasser case, people believed they were breathing a poison gas. Their fear and their belief in the harm were so strong that their bodies produced real headaches, nausea, and shortness of breath. The symptoms were not faked. They were a true physical response to a strong psychological threat that was not real. This effect is why mass hysteria can spread physical sickness so fast. When people are under collective anxiety and hear that others are feeling dizzy or weak, their own minds tell their bodies to start feeling that way too. It is a powerful form of self-sabotage, a dangerous power built into the human mind. The body responds to the fear of the poison with the same urgency as it would to the actual poison. The nocebo effect is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of deep connection. Our bodies are programmed to protect us when the group is afraid. If everyone around us is reacting to a threat, our body is wise to join the reaction. This ancient mechanism is what makes us vulnerable to mass delusion. The physical symptoms are a way for the body to agree with the group's shared false belief in danger. Understanding the nocebo effect is a key tool for the psychological historian. It explains why the dancing plague was so deadly and why the Mattoon Gasser was so convincing. In every case of mass sighting or mass sickness, the true physical engine is often the patient's own belief that they are being harmed. The belief, not the enemy, creates the pain. Tonight, we rest with the quiet, careful knowledge of the nocebo. Know that your mind is a kind and powerful friend, but it is also a great believer. Guard your thoughts against fear and negative suggestion. especially when the whole world seems to be panicking. The most powerful medicine and the most powerful poison both live in the quiet space of your own belief. The shared ache in the assembly line. We see many modern examples of mass psychogenic illness in simple workplaces. In factories or offices, sudden outbreaks of headaches, nausea, dizziness or tremors can spread quickly through the workers. This is not caused by poor food or bad air. It is caused by high levels of collective anxiety about the work itself. The physical symptoms are a shared, silent language of protest against stress. The workplace often forces people to work in repetitive, difficult or boring ways. This creates a deep, shared feeling of being trapped or unhappy. The company is often viewed as an authority figure that cannot be openly criticised. The body finds a way to speak the unspoken complaint. When one person feels a headache because of the stress, the sight of their suffering acts as a massive suggestion to the others, whose minds are already full of the same feeling. The pattern of these outbreaks is very consistent. They almost always start with the person who is most stressed or most unhappy with the job. Then, the sickness spreads to the closest friends and then to the whole group. The sickness is often an agreed upon safe way for the workers to stop the factory line or to take a rest day without being personally blamed. The mass hysteria becomes a collective, unconscious strategy for dealing with unbearable pressure. The official response to these events is important. When doctors and managers treat the sickness as if it is caused by a real virus or a chemical leak, they accidentally validate the delusion. This strong suggestion from an authority figure makes the symptoms grow more intense and last longer. The sickness only stops when the leaders decide that the problem is not a physical threat, but a psychological one, and address the real stress of the workplace. The shared ache in the assembly line is a quiet, modern history of the mass mind. It shows us that when people cannot voice their unhappiness with words, their bodies will find a louder way to speak. The nausea, the dizziness, and the shaking are real. But the cause is not a germ in the air. It is the silent, shared belief that they're working in a dangerous, unhealthy environment. Tonight, we rest on the quiet knowledge that the body is a powerful storyteller. The symptoms of collective anxiety are a map of where people are suffering the most pressure. May you find peace in your rest, and may your mind and body communicate softly without the need for a sudden shared illness to speak a great truth. The leader who tells us what we see. In every great story of mass hallucination, there is always a powerful figure who helps to solidify the belief. This leader is not always evil. They can be a trusted priest, a local doctor, a respected journalist, or a general. This figure can unintentionally validate and solidify a fleeting collective delusion into history. Their words act as the loudest, most powerful form of suggestion. When the girls in Salem began to have fits, the doctor gave the event its name, bewitchment. When the people in Fatima saw a light, the priest told them it was a miracle. When the citizens of Mattoon smelled a strange odour, the newspapers called it the mad gasser. The moment an authority figure validates the shared fear, the mass mind is given permission to fully believe the impossible thing. The simple act of naming the fear makes it real. This happens because the human mind has a deep, quiet need for order and safety. When something strange happens, we turn to the figure who is supposed to be in charge for the answer. If the leader says, yes, that shadow is a ghost, then the mind accepts the answer without doing any more difficult work. The belief of the leader becomes the safe, easy truth for the whole group. The power of the media in the modern world is a perfect example of this leadership. A news anchor or a popular online personality can quickly spread a mass suggestion to millions of people who see them as a trusted leader. The way the leader frames a strange event, as a conspiracy, an alien landing, or a medical crisis, will determine the shape of the resulting mass hysteria for the entire population. The psychological historian must always look at the leaders first. They are the great amplifiers of mass delusion. They take a small internal worry and turn it into a massive external drama. The leader's belief acts as a giant mirror, showing the whole crowd the same unified image of the danger or the miracle. This unified picture is what makes the delusion last and become a true part of history. Tonight, we rest with the quiet understanding of this hidden power. Every time a great crowd sees the same vision, a leader has helped them to focus their eyes. May you find your rest in the knowledge that you are your own final authority. Always question the simple answer, and let your own quiet mind be the judge of the shadows. The quiet space where facts vanish. When a traumatic event is shared by a group, the memory of that event can become distorted. The collective memory often smooths out the rough edges and fills in the blanks until everyone has the same, consistent, yet ultimately false memory of what truly happened. This is a quiet, slow form of mass hallucination that works backward in time, changing the past to fit the present need. This distortion happens because the mind dislikes confusion. When people talk about a traumatic event, they rely on each other to build the story. If one person remembers a detail slightly wrong, the next person might adopt that mistake, and soon the whole group remembers the wrong detail as fact. This is called memory conformity, and it is a natural way the mass mind creates a shared, easy history that everyone can agree upon. Think of the Angels of Mons. The initial reports were vague. Some saw light, some saw smoke, some saw figures, but the national need for a miracle was so strong that the collective memory settled on the clear, comforting image of the angels. The stories that did not fit were quietly forgotten, and the ones that fit the national need were told again and again until they became the only true memory of the event. The creation of a unified, false memory is a way for a group to reduce their collective anxiety about the past. It is easier to believe a shared, simple, heroic story than to face a complex, confusing and scary set of facts. The mass delusion that results is not a vision in the sky, but a quiet, agreed-upon version of history that changes the future by controlling the past. The psychological historian knows that human memory is a powerful tool, but it is also fragile and highly social. When we share a memory, we're also sharing the mistakes in that memory. The space where the facts vanish is the quiet, perfect place where the mass suggestion can live and grow unchallenged, becoming the new, accepted reality for a whole generation. Tonight, we rest on the quiet warning of the fading facts. The truest vision is often the one that is hardest to find, hidden under layers of shared agreement. May your rest be deep and clear, and may your own quiet mind protect the truth of the things you have seen and known, without letting the worries of the crowd change your past. The illusion that lives behind the screen. Our final stop in the great dramas of history is the modern world. Today, the mass hallucination often lives entirely behind the screen. This is where online panic, viral conspiracies, and social media trends create a powerful shared illusion. The mass delusion is shared through text and image, not proximity, but the psychological effect is the same as the dancing plague. The screen provides the perfect environment for mass suggestion. It allows people to live in an echo chamber, where they only see information and opinions that confirm their existing worries. This isolates them from different facts and makes the shared belief stronger. The speed of the internet allows a single, fearful idea to travel to millions of people in a minute, creating a high level of collective anxiety that is always ready to break out. The mass mind now works on a global scale. A person in one country can see the same viral, fictional image or story as a person on the other side of the world. The image acts as the simple, strong suggestion that binds them together. People begin to report seeing the fictional signs and symbols in their own town, just like the citizens of Mattoon saw the invisible gasser. The illusion jumps from the screen into the real world. The problem with this modern form of mass hysteria is that there is no easy way to break the cycle. There is no town square to close or a single radio broadcast to shut down. The leader who validates the delusion can be anyone with a phone. The collective memory is constantly being rewritten and strengthened by a never-ending stream of shared images and words. The psychological historian sees a clear, repeating pattern. The content of the delusion changes, from witches to aliens to secret conspiracies, but the underlying psychological structure remains the same. The process is always: collective anxiety leads to ambiguous stimulus, which is made real by mass suggestion from a trusted source, resulting in a mass delusion. The screen is just the newest path for this ancient human pattern. Tonight, we step away from the flickering light of the screen. The great illusion of our time is that we're alone in our worry. But the truth is that the worry is shared globally. Rest now, and remember that the greatest defense against mass suggestion is a quiet mind that can look away from the screen and back at the clear, simple truth of your own peaceful room. The journey slows now. Breathe deep, feeling the weight of ages lift from your shoulders. If these quiet revelations brought you even one soft moment of rest, let another person find it too. Share this story with a friend who needs to hear history's gentle whisper. Subscribe to keep our light glowing in the deep, quiet night. When a lie is a peaceful place to rest. We now move into the deepest, quietest part of the story. Why do people choose to believe a collective lie, even when the facts are confusing? The answer is often found in the need for peace. The psychological benefit of collective belief, even if it is completely untrue, is that it reduces the great burden of individual anxiety. A lie, when shared by everyone, can be a peaceful place to rest. When the world feels chaotic and confusing, the mass delusion offers a common framework. If the problem is not a random disease but a witch, then you know who the enemy is. If the sudden sound is not a scary mystery but an alien ship, then the world is still simple and organised. The collective hallucination simplifies a chaotic reality, giving the mind a clear villain or a clear path to follow. This is a deep, quiet comfort. It is easier to stand together with your neighbours, believing in a simple shared enemy, than to stand alone, feeling confused by a complex truth. The agreement of the crowd is a form of safety. This is why the stories of mass hysteria often stop the moment the group is scattered and alone. The safety and the comfort are found in the shared belief. The shared delusion acts as a giant psychological blanket. Everyone gets under the same warm, heavy cover of belief. Inside that cover, the terrifying randomness of the world is kept out. The mass mind is working to protect the individual from the great scary truths that have no simple answer. This is a powerful, unconscious form of mental survival. The psychological historian knows that human beings are fundamentally social. We are meant to share our pain and our fear. When we're unable to solve a problem on our own, the collective mind quickly steps in to offer a shared, agreed upon, and often beautiful lie that serves the greater need for peace. This lie provides social cohesion and purpose. Tonight, we rest with the quiet understanding of this trade-off. Sometimes, the most peaceful thing we can do is let go of the impossible truth and rest in the simple shared story. May you find your quiet rest in a space of perfect safety, knowing that the need for peace is a deep, powerful human desire that has shaped all of history. The simple shapes that make us see. We see a repeating pattern in the images created by the mass mind. The visions are rarely complex or strange. They're often simple shapes. A spinning wheel, a bright circle, a simple dark figure or a vague light. We must look at why the human brain favours these simple forms when it's creating a mass hallucination. The simple shape is easier to remember and easier to pass on to the next person. If the vision of the Virgin Mary was too complex, the 10,000 people in Fatima would have remembered 10,000 different things. But the simple shape of the light and the clear message made it easy for the collective memory to agree on the same miracle. The mass delusion needs simplicity to survive. The spinning wheel, the circle of light, and the simple, tall figure are shapes that the human brain is already very familiar with. Our eyes are drawn to circles, as they are the shape of the sun and the moon. They represent comfort and completeness. When the mass mind is searching for a figure of power or hope, it often uses these simple, powerful and easy to agree upon forms to build the vision. The phenomenon of pareidolia is always at work. This is when the brain sees a face or a familiar shape in a random pattern, like a cloud or a shadow on the wall. When an entire town is ready to see a ghost, their minds all agree to use the same part of the cloud to see the shared figure. The mass suggestion makes the brain focus on the same piece of ambiguity and solve the puzzle with the same simple answer. These simple, repeating shapes show the consistency of human fears and hopes across all of history. The things we worry about, the silent stranger, the blinding light, the spinning chaos, are ancient. The psychological historian sees the same simple symbols being used in medieval times and in modern times, proving that the human heart does not change, even if the technology does. Tonight we rest on the quiet beauty of the simple shape. The spinning light of Fatima and the dark figure of the London ghost were both simple, powerful symbols that the mass mind needed. May your rest be full of simple, peaceful shapes, and may the great, quiet circle of your night bring you comfort and ease. Every ghost is a story told before. We have looked at many different events, dancing plagues, ghost armies, and alien ships, but the psychological historian sees that almost every mass delusion is a variation on an ancient theme. The stories we see today, the secret conspiracies and the modern monsters, are just the old stories wearing new masks. Every ghost is a story that has been told before. The underlying themes of mass hysteria are always the same: fear of the unknown, fear of poison or sickness, and the hope for a miracle. The medieval person blamed the plague on the devil. The modern person blames the illness on a secret government conspiracy. The language is different, but the core need to find a simple, clear enemy is exactly the same. The mass mind always returns to the familiar stories. The figure of the witch in Salem is a deep, old story that existed in Europe for hundreds of years. The people of Salem simply imported that old story and applied it to their New World anxieties. The mass suggestion was already rooted in their history and their religious books. This shows that the seed of the delusion is often very old and very well known. The collective memory acts like a giant library of archetypes. When a community feels a great stress, the mass mind goes into the library and pulls out the most appropriate simple story to explain the stress. The fear of a war, the mind pulls out the story of the ghostly army. The fear of the future, the mind pulls out the story of the alien ship. The ghost is always custom fitted to the present worry. This repetition is a source of great comfort. It proves that human nature is consistent and that our fears are not new. When a new mass hallucination takes hold, we can look back at the old stories and see the same patterns of collective anxiety and mass suggestion at work. The past gives us the simple key to unlock the secrets of the present. Tonight, we rest on the quiet consistency of human history. The things that make us afraid are always the same, and the ways we cope are always the same. May you find peace in the knowledge that your own worries are not new, but are part of a deep, old, quiet human pattern. The great dramas are simply the old scripts, played out again and again. The one who sees what is truly there. In every story of mass hysteria, there are always a few quiet people who are able to step back and see the psychological pattern instead of the shared vision. These people were the true observers, the first psychological historians. They did not see the alien ship or the witch. They saw the shared fear and the power of the collective mind at work. In the midst of the Salem panic, a few brave ministers and leaders eventually questioned the spectral evidence. They said that the devil's power could not be used to condemn an innocent person. Their careful logic was the first light of reason that broke the fever of the mass delusion. These quiet, steady voices acted as an antidote to the strong dose of mass suggestion. The one who sees the truth is often the person who is not part of the core group of anxiety. They are the outsider, the observer, or the person who's not afraid of being alone. They are the ones who can resist the immense social pressure and the strong pull of memory conformity. They prefer the difficult, complex truth over the easy, shared lie of the crowd. In the Halifax slasher case, it was the police who finally resisted the immense public fear. By simply looking at the facts, the lack of a real attacker, the minor nature of the injuries, they were able to officially deny the reality of the slasher. This official denial was the great medicine that ended the mass sighting. The quiet power of fact broke the powerful spell of the mass delusion. The story of the observer is a message of quiet hope. It proves that the human mind can break free from the powerful pull of the crowd. It reminds us that we do not have to agree to believe in the ghost or the miracle simply because everyone else does. The strength to stand alone in your thought is the greatest defense against any mass hysteria. Tonight, we honor the quiet courage of the one who saw the truth. May you find your rest in the knowledge that your own careful, quiet observation is a great and powerful thing. Let the strength of your own single truth be the foundation of your peaceful night. This ability to see clearly is the greatest gift of the human mind. Sleep now, on the edge of knowing. We have reached the end of our long, quiet journey. We have seen the dancing feet of Strasbourg, the shadows of Salem, and the spinning sun of Fatima. All these great events lead us to the final, quiet question. How much of the world we see is truly out there, and how much is created by the powerful, shared mind of us all? The mystery remains, even as we drift to sleep. The mass hallucination is the story of humanity's deepest need for meaning. It shows us that when the mind is tired, stressed, or filled with hope, it will work with other minds to create the visions it needs to survive. The ghosts and the miracles are not just history. They are a constant, quiet process of collective creation that never truly stops. The truth is that our consciousness is a quiet, powerful light that constantly shapes the dark world around us. We're not just passive receivers of fact. We are active creators of reality. The mass delusion is the proof of this power. It shows that the boundary between what is real and what is only believed is a soft, gentle line that can be crossed by a simple, shared thought. The final gentle lesson is one of peaceful acceptance. We can rest knowing that the greatest source of both wonder and fear lives inside the human community. We are never alone in our thoughts, our fears, or our sudden, strange beliefs. The power of the crowd, the mass mind, is a quiet energy that connects us all in the deepest parts of our being. As we close this history, let the quiet energy of the psychological historian settle over you. We have seen the patterns, we know the rules, and we understand the power of mass suggestion. But the greatest comfort is knowing that we have found the light inside the illusion. The simple fact that you understand these stories means you are protected from the darkness. Sleep now on the edge of knowing. May the patterns we have discussed today bring you a great deep sense of peace. The shadows have a name, the whispers have a cause, and the great history of the shared mind is quiet now. Let the gentle force of the collective memory guide you into a state of perfect rest and sweet dreams. The soft answer is this: the true ghosts of history were never outside in the dark, but inside the light we shared. Every collective vision, every shadow army, every impossible dance was a signal of deep, quiet human need. We were never alone in our fear, and we are not alone now in our rest. Tonight, the mind is safe, anchored by the slow, gentle rhythm of the planet. Sleep now, knowing that every moment of wonder you experienced was just a story the world told itself. May your dreams be quiet and your awakenings peaceful. Sweet dreams.